Progressive Magazine Dictation, month February, exercise 1 and 2. Ready? Start. I am always glad to have an opportunity of meeting different sections of people. There is no doubt that the business community has played, is playing, and I hope will continue to play an important role. I think there is absolutely no contradiction at all in the policy, as you, Mr. President, have mentioned just now. We do think that the private sector has an important part to play, but we think that what goes by the name of pragmatism is precisely what you have condemned in the latter part of your speech, that is, expediency on the part of the very small section of the people at the cost of the larger section of the people, and unless the business community realizes this, it is no use talking of obligations to the public unless you know exactly what that means. It is no use talking about pragmatism unless you know where in the interest of the country lies. It is no use talking even about desirability of production unless we know production of for what. Do we want to produce for the sake of producing, or do we want to produce so that the standard of living of the poorest of our people can be raised? You began and even ended on a pessimistic note. I beg to differ with you. I think there is a buoyancy in the country, in the economic field, in the political field, and in the social field. I think never has India at any time since independence been better poised for advance and for going ahead at a faster rate than it is today. There are many difficulties in our way. May I ask you, are these labor problems, racial problems, the world? Is the law and order problem confined or unique to India? Is it not forced by the United States of America or by any other country which you choose to pick out on the map of the world? Let us be realistic when we are facing these problems. The business community has first of all to learn not to run down the nation. You have condemned for running down the private sector. May I ask you to look at the speeches which have been delivered through the years and the number of speeches which I have sat through condemning the public sector. As you, Mr. President, have said in your address, there can be no economic progress in conditions of instability, uncertainty, and insecurity. Any attempt at bringing about a greater measure of economic equality will receive a setback in any such environment, and in all situations in which law and order breaks down, it is the poorer sections of the society who suffer most than the affluent section. But I would like to draw your attention to one thing: stability cannot be and should not be equated with the perpetuation of the status quo. quo. Stability cannot be brought about if the present inequalities are allowed to remain or to grow, and unless we take note of the aspirations of the people and engineer change peacefully, we shall be overtaken by events and by far greater violence than you have seen today. Today, there is an atmosphere of restlessness in our country and also in every other country in the world, and even in the most affluent of societies, as you may have noticed in the media. And countries that were quite until recently considered to be heavens of peace and prosperity do not seem to be quite so now. A new generation is coming up into prominence in all the countries whose attitudes and beliefs differ from those of the older generation. In all spheres of life, therefore, whether it is politics or business and industry, we must take note of this new development and refashion our policies and programs so as to respond more readily to the needs of the changing times. Your speech, Mr. President, clubs together the concentration of economic power and political power and considers both to be undesirable. Now, there are adequate safeguards in our political setup against the concentration of political power. Our federal system, with its allocation of powers as between the center and the states, is by itself a corrective against any trend towards the concentration of political power. We have now the phenomenon of different political parties holding power in different states, and in the national sphere also we have a powerful opposition subjecting every move of the government to the closest and most critical scrutiny. But businessmen should ask themselves frankly whether there are similar correctives against abuses flowing from the concentration of economic power. What action has been taken in our country to build up active organizations of shareholders, consumers, and small businesses?